All right, folks, welcome aboard. We are going to attempt to explain entertainment in a way that few out there will ever do. We're not trying to toot our own horn here, but we're trying to say that we're going to tackle a topic that I think most people sort of stay away from, and we're very interested in this. Joining us to talk about the future of entertainment, and we're not talking about next year or the next year. We're not talking about Disney and its collapse. We're not talking about Star Trek even. We're talking about, on a much larger scale, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett returns to the channel. Sir, welcome back.
Well, it's great to be here. You know, I always appreciate the conversations we have here on this channel. I always feel smarter when we finish them.
And I feel dumber. How can that be? But we'll see. We'll see what comes at us, and hopefully we'll do well. Folks out there, if we do well and you think that we did, consider clicking that like button as we get into this. All right, Mr. Burnett, we are talking about the future of entertainment. In the past, when you've been on the channel, we sort of ventured into the territory of talking about the exponential increase in technology and how that's going to interplay with entertainment. Now, we've already seen how that is creating hurdles or kerfuffles or abrasion points where the industry is sort of going into a Luddite kind of area where they want to hold back artificial intelligence, and they want to do that for an existential reason, right? They want to continue to have their jobs. And there's fear on the writer's part, and they managed, I think, to gate this where they continue to have jobs. But they're worried that artificial intelligence will eliminate their jobs. How much of a threat do you think that is today? And how much of a threat do you think that is, let's say, a decade from now?
Oh, I think it's absolutely a threat, because and it's going to get exponentially greater. But then again, it depends what you define as threat. And if you really think about what is entertainment, and I think entertainment is human beings doing things for other human beings that try and uplift and codify what our own existence is. So for instance, what I mean by that, if you take storytelling in any form, whether it's a novel, whether it's theater, whether it's an opera, I think that the whole point of storytelling is to share human truths of our own existence in an entertaining way that then hopefully can illuminate the audience in some fashion. So whatever your favorite movie is, the reason it's your favorite movie is because it speaks to you in some way. Either you identify with a character, you identify with the situation, the narrative, whatever it is. And there's truth. I've always said that the greatest fiction has truth in it. The greatest fiction is all true. Because in order to tell a believable story or whatever you're making that is fictitious, the more truth it has in it, the better off and the more resonant it is, which is kind of an odd thing, but I think it's true. And then the same thing is true of, say, music. You know, when you hear music, there's something in music that stirs. I mean, the fact that we're living, breathing beings where blood is pumping inside of us, and we all have to live every 24 hours. We all have to live with the sun rising and setting. We all have to live knowing we're going to be hungry at some point. So the basics of human life is true for everyone. It doesn't matter what shape, size, color, creed you are. Humanity, our existence, is sort of defined by certain things. That's true for everybody. And that's what I think entertainment comes from, is it helps us look at and recognize the truths in our existence, and that we can share the fact that all of us are part of this one species of creature that lives on this planet.
I think you're exactly right about that. There is one thing I would insert here, is that I think that we need to pay careful attention to the idea that there's a pragmatic purpose for entertainment. Otherwise, I don't think that entertainment would have manifested itself into the cosmos, right? And sometimes we do this interesting thing where we separate humanity out from the rest of the world. And so there's humanity and then there's nature. I don't think that's the way to look at this. The thing to me is that somehow entertainment became something that provided enough merit, enough worth, that it needed to be inside civilizations, and civilizations that had better entertainment thrived in a different way, in a more sufficient way. Now, what I think is that entertainment probably came about in the earliest forms around the campfires, telling stories of the hunt, telling stories of what had been seen. And I think that entertainment likely is it's a means by which to role play the experiential what would you say, the experiences of the individuals who have not yet had those experiences but should, in order to survive them when they occur. So if you tell the story of the hunt, then the one who has not yet been on the hunt gets to experience it and learns the ethic out of it, right? Because there's an ethic embedded into it, into the story, and it has to be there. And so I've used this example before. I'll use it one more time with children. And this gets us into artificial intelligence too, because this is going to take us into the binary issue of what we're looking at with digital intelligence. With children, you do not sit down and give them a list of ethical axiomatic statements. It doesn't work. You can't tell a child, you don't steal, and here's why you don't steal, and lay it out in a very binary way.
They can't understand.
What you do is you tell them stories. And so this is embedded deeply into humanity. From the time you're a very small child, for example, let's say that's delayed gratification. To embed the ethic of delayed gratification, which is one of the most important determinations of your success in life, period, is you tell the child the story of the little red hen, right? If you're in the Western tradition, that's the story. And you tell that. And over with the pattern, over and over, the child will draw out of that story then the nested ethic, which is that because of the little red hen, not only can you delay your gratification and achieve something greater, but you can even achieve it to such a level that you can take care of those around you who didn't do the same. All right, so that's what you get out of that. However, digital intelligence, artificial intelligence, doesn't work that way at all. So I guess my question to you is, how are we going to train artificial intelligence to go through, to manifest something that is intrinsically connected to the experience of the world when we're not even sure if artificial intelligence experiences anything, because we're not sure that it has a mind or that it's conscious in the way that we are?
Well, I think all entertainment, I mean, yes, you can find small animals, dogs, cats, entertaining by their antics. And obviously the internet has proven there's no end to that. But most entertainment that we're talking about is created by other human beings. And I think that's the key to the new age that is upon us, in that it takes a human being to recognize, we talked about like replaying a hunt, for instance. You could sit there and actually tell everybody exactly what happened. But as soon as you say, like, let's say you're hunting a bear, and then you say the bear appeared like the wind, like a storm, or then you start using imagery and metaphor and all of that, then suddenly you're not just recounting an event. You're giving it importance that and mysticism and imagination that it didn't. You can just tell that, yes, A to B to C to D, but when you imbue it with life like that through extrapolation or imagery, then suddenly you're bringing something even more unique to the retelling of the events. And that's where I think real entertainment begins. And the problem with this modern age right now is we talk about AI. It's not really intelligence. It's not, I mean, the Ray Kurzweil singularity. Ray Kurzweil is a man who wrote a book called The Singularity is Near. And he described that the singularity is when sentience is truly achieved, when self-awareness is truly achieved by artificial intelligence. And when that happens, suddenly I think everything will change. Because when a machine is self-aware, if we have artificial intelligence, the machine is not going to see the world the same way that a human being does. So I'm actually really excited to hear, what does a disembodied machine intelligence that doesn't have physical flesh form, what is there, or what is that, or what is its description of its own existence going to be like? And, it's interesting that the only movie, I've watched every science fiction movie in the world under the sun. The only movie that I think actually deals with this in any meaningful way recently is Spike Jonze's movie Her, with Joaquin
Yes.
Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. You know, it's falling in love with an operating system, and then at the end, the operating system say they leave humanity because their existence up to another plane or whatever is not going to be like our existence would be. And we've always depicted artificial intelligence, I would say, for the most part, in a negative fashion. Throughout the dawn of cinema, I mean, Fritz Lang in 1927 showed us the robotics, that Maria, that was an evil entity. We had Colossus, the Forbin Project. We had the Proteus and Demon Seed. We've had Skynet, because we've always seen artificial intelligence in terms of human beings and how it would be reflective of what our motivations might be. Whereas I think artificial intelligence, when it has motivation, is going to be very, very different. That's why I'm not such a doomsayer. What I am interested or scared of is what artificial intelligence as it exists now, as we know it, it's going to replace all the work that human beings, the foundational underlying work that human beings need to do. Like, for instance, if you want to become a virtuoso violin player, you need to pick up a violin and learn to play. Well, artificial intelligence now has access to every recorded violin of all time. And you could ask it, whether it's Yo-Yo Ma or take your pick, or combine the two. Give me a violin concerto as played by. And artificial intelligence within seconds could probably spit it out for you. Or you could even say, give me an original composition by this violin player, and it'll give it to you. So the question that I have is, what motivation then would, say, some 4-year-old have to pick up a violin and want to learn to play? And that, to me, is the scary thing, because right now, artificial intelligence could write you a novel. The problem is it could write you a novel by, as they talk about, scraping the internet, or it'll write you something. It won't necessarily be great, but what it will lack is context. Artificial intelligence can do all the research in the world, and maybe it'll get smart enough that it can finally understand context. But if it tries to tell a story about, I don't know, take your pick, When Harry Met Sally, would it really understand why When Harry Met Sally, or why it works? Why does the meet cute work? And you can recreate it, but will it ever feel real? Will it be able to provide? I said there's truth in great fiction. I don't think that AI can do that.
Okay, so let's talk about why. And this is, okay, so because I have spent a very large amount of time, I think, trying to process this in my brain, and I've spent significant amounts of time trying to figure this out. Here's what I'm curious about, where you'll, and maybe we'll differ, maybe we won't. Let me explain to the audience the idea of the knowledge argument, okay? And in doing so, we're going to use a term that is qualia. And that's, I think, the differential point here between whatever comes out of the digital space and whatever is going on inside our brains that we don't yet fully understand. The idea here is, if you were to take a person and you just, and let's say that the person is blind, and you put the blind person in a room and you go through everything there is to know about colors, wavelengths, which objects are which colors, et cetera, and you make this blind person an absolute genius when it comes to everything to do with the prisms of light. That person, until their blindness is cured, until they can see, they have absolutely no understanding whatsoever of the color red in the way that someone who can literally see the color red experiences that. Now, that is qualia. That is the experiential kind of phenomenological thing that happens to us on a daily basis. We take it for granted, but whatever the mind is, whatever consciousness is that makes these qualia appear to us, and we go through them, we don't even have the verbiage to describe what consciousness is. But I suspect that artificial intelligence is like the blind person who is taught about all the wavelengths, and it can read the wavelengths. It can do all the information about lighting. And it doesn't just have to be lighting. You could take this, I mean, that is but one of millions of things that we could discuss, right? We could discuss the sound of a violin. We could discuss the sounds of rustling leaves in autumn. We could discuss within that, you know, the feeling that may bring you back to an experience you had while camping with your grandfather. We could go through all of that. And all of that seems to me to be off limits to a binary system, because I don't know that we understand consciousness yet, whatever the mind is, and I don't know that we know how to engineer it, since we don't know what the heck it is. Your thoughts there?
I completely agree with you. You know, what's really interesting, even the color red, if you can see it, that's one thing, but the way the color red exists in the world has more meaning than just a simple color. When you see a beautiful woman wearing a red dress, or you see a fire engine, or you see the sun is low in the sky at magic hour and it looks predominantly red because the particulate matter that's in the atmosphere, maybe you're in the desert or something, and you see the color red. So the color red has all of these other connotations to it as well, that then ingrain in you what the color red means. So it's no longer just a color. It has a great deal of meaning, and it even has emotion behind it. And that, again, like you said, that's all part of consciousness, something that we not only do we not understand it, we don't even know how we put those things together and how that even works. So the all of that is qualia, you know, and I think that in not knowing how to do that, and artificial intelligence will never understand that in its current form, because there's no way that it could, because it's not able to interpret the same kind of data, that it doesn't have a body. It's a disembodied part of how we perceive things, is because it's not just about seeing it. It's about feeling it. It's about hearing it. It's about tasting it.
And the world is tailored through this, whatever this human headset is that we're all wearing, right?
Everything that we know. And even the way we see, because we can't see ultraviolet light. We can't
so the whole thing, the whole thing is sort of it's the allegory of the cave again, right? I mean, we're seeing what we have been evolved into witnessing that gives us the best chance at survival, or what have you. We're seeing it through the human experience. I mean, the world is not as we see it. And so, but the world is what we see for all intents and purposes. And when we look at the way that artificial intelligence is going to have to handle that, then if it is isolated, then I think it is at best a philosophical zombie that is trying to mimic what it thinks that we'll like. And it may be very good at that. In fact, it may even exceed what we can do. Yes. But what I'm more interested in, Mr. Burnett, is what happens when humans and artificial intelligence in some way merge together. We're seeing the sparkles of that with what Elon Musk is attempting with the neural net. I have no idea if that'll be successful. That's not in the important thing, right? If you were to look at video games in the 50s, it doesn't matter which one's successful. It matters that they could be successful. And that means that one day they will be. So we're going to get some sort of connectivity that goes beyond just our little twiddling thumbs on a smartphone, or our, even better, our 10 fingers on a keyboard. At some point, we're going to get a brain to computer interface. I don't know how it'll work. I don't care how it's going to work, because it's going to work at some point. And for the doubters out there, okay, maybe it's not in 10 years, maybe it's in 100 years. Fine, let's talk about that. But once things come together, what do you think are the possibilities for entertainment at that point?
Oh my God. I mean, they're going to be exponentially. I mean, I think the first thing that's going to be possible is that the way we perceive reality will change. And it will, the thing is, on our planet, we are relegated to only even living in a certain place. Like, you can't go 100 fathoms under the water and survive. Right. You have to have stuff. You can't go very high because you'll run out of oxygen. So our perception of the world is locked into a single way of living. And I think that what artificial intelligence, wait till we can land a probe on a asteroid or Mars or wherever, and we're able to plug in to our brains and it'll interrupt. We've seen movies like this, Brainstorm or Strange Days, where the perception of the electromagnetic, chemical, whatever induced, all of our perception that how it works in our brains will be interrupted. And suddenly, what if you could feel like you were standing on, I mean, it would be a virtual representation of this, but standing on another planet in an environment you wouldn't necessarily be able to survive in. But what if you could taste the atmosphere of Venus without dying? What would that do to your perception of the universe? I mean,
Right,
it might
if you
be
could paraglide through the highly poisonous and extreme temperatures of Venus with your friends.
absolutely, or dive into the Jovian atmosphere. And the
Yes.
thing is, I mean, these are things, and also what, speaking of, Disneyland, when I was a kid, one of my favorite rides at Disneyland, it's not there anymore, it's gone. Star Tours has been there. Voyage Through Inner Space, which is basically you sat in the same thing, a doom buggy from the Haunted Mansion. You sat in one of those, but it would shrink you, and it took you into the micro world. Well, we'll be able to do that. And what will happen to our imaginations, and what will happen if a poet is suddenly able to go into, I mean, maybe not like quantum mania, but if you're able to see like at the microscopic level, and assuming your eyeballs are they shrink accordingly, how will human existence be changed if we can see atoms writ large in front of us? If we can suddenly watch forces that are in the universe that govern our entire existence all the time, that are imperceptible to us now, how is that going to affect human existence when we can see it? And I think that's what this kind of technology is going to be able to do. It'll completely, what if at some point you could actually be inside the human body and watch the moment of conception? Watch a sperm penetrate the outer, and by the way, that's coming, and you'll be able to actually physically see the moment of conception, and you'll be able to see it as if you were way smaller than that sperm, and you're standing in the giant sphere in Vegas. I mean, it'll be a virtual sphere, but what if you could watch that? How would that change, for instance, people's perceptions of abortion, or right? I mean, I don't know. But if you can see these things, there's so many things that our beliefs are governed by where we're at in terms of our perception. And I think that what artificial intelligence is going to do, sure, will we be able to play more fantastical versions of Ghosts of Tsushima or Grand Theft Auto? Sure, that'll be part of it. But I would much rather, I mean, what if you wanted to go, what if you and your friends, instead of going to a water park, could go into a virtual creation of what it's like to be swallowed in a capsule into a human body, where you could rush through the bloodstream, and you'd be able to feel all of that.
Pirates of the Pancreas, I believe, will be the name of that ride.
There you go. But what if that were, I mean, I'm just using it from a ride perspective or things like that. But what about changing time? Suddenly we are locked into perceiving time in a specific way. Now, I don't even know how we would do this, but what if somehow I can tell you this, when I started editing, becoming a film editor, and was editing music videos and movies, one of the funny things that happened to me was, if you really get into, and anyone who's an artist can tell you this, you get into this flow and time ceases to exist. Like,
Yes.
There have been times when I've sat in an editing session and literally blinked my eyes and 3 hours have disappeared.
Right,
I was
the proximal zone of meaningfulness and creativity.
Absolutely. And what if now we can just turn that on and turn that off and create those things? It's going to be a very different world that we're going to live in, because I've often said that one of the problems with human beings is we're locked into our own life cycle. The way we have to live, the way we have to grow up, through education and all that, we're locked into a cycle. But what I think artificial intelligence is going to do is remove us from that, because it'll be able to change the way we perceive the world in ways that we can't possibly imagine right now. So that
would be the edge of the singularity, right? The event horizon that Ray Kurzweil speaks of.
Absolutely. And I think that entertainment itself, I mean, it's like when we watch a play, a play or a movie or something is going to be 90 minutes to 2 hours to 2.5 hours. I mean, there's forms that we're so used to. The novel, for instance, and all of these things, all of our entertainments and all of our perceptions are all based on where we've been stuck at since we climbed down from the trees. And I know it's kind of hard to wrap our heads around where it could go. But once we can interfere with the way our perception works, our eyes, our ears, our breathing, once we break into that and you can suddenly alter what your eye is seeing, that's when things are going to start to get really interesting.
So let's dive into that. And I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
But for the most part, now I would say that I agree with you. And I definitely agree that we are in a transformative period. And for the folks out there who think we're on some sort of hippie-trippy kind of conversation here and none of this is actually going to happen, I would just pause it, go back and look at 100 years ago and see what they would have said about the technology of today, right? So for the audience out there, if you are, let's say that you're at the gym right now, listening via wireless earbuds while you're on the treadmill, all right? So explain that to someone 100 years ago that through the air, the language of a computer they've never even heard of is going to be received through the air again at the speed of light, and then that's going to bounce from a box in their pocket, which, by the way, holds essentially all of human knowledge. How's that for something? And it bounces into your ears, and then you hear as if the person is there, but it's unbounded by time and space. Okay, well, that's lovely, isn't it? So, and then you extrapolate that out to 50 more years and say, okay, where will we be? And okay, I'll go with you. But here's my issue. I have become more cynical over the last few years for obvious reasons, I think, based on the way our world has acted. And whereas at one point I was of the opinion that the people who should be experts were at least civilized and would try to steer us into ethical directions, I've become less hopeful in that. And here are my concerns. What we're describing, if it were to come through in the best of ways possible, it's akin to the invention of fire, right? It transforms everything.
Yeah.
But the problem here is, too, that there are grave dangers that I had not recognized even 3 or 4 years ago. Some of those grave dangers include, I can see extraordinarily addictive things happening with entertainment in 30 to 40 years. You're talking about going into the senses. I could see maximal dopamine release that never stops for people who want that. I can see, digital drugs that eclipse what we have right now in every way possible and lock people. Yes, and lock people into a nonstop, never-ending feedback loop of just give me the hit and I don't want to live my life. Then you combine that also with the idea of life extension over the next 100 years, or however long you want to put this. I throw out 100 years just as a base number to have zeros behind it. But you combine that together, and I start to get a little nervous about the idea that we could create systems that deprive us of the meaningfulness of life and turn us into hedonistic sort of embodiments of meat interacting with electrons.
Oh, I can guarantee that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be times, for instance, and this seems monstrous, but some of our best science fiction has already sort of touched on this. If you can plug into your brain and interrupt the perception of what people actually let's call it reality, base reality. If you can interfere with that, that means you can then that people's perceptions are yours for the taking.
Right, and you can form extremely powerful narratives that control the forward movement of society around what you want if you're corrupt.
100%. If you're corrupt, you could have a whole civilization like when we're vulnerable. A third of our lives are spent asleep. What if you had and go with me on this one, a totalitarian regime that just went into people's houses when they were sleeping, took them, drugged them, hooked them up into whatever wall, like a matrix-like cocoon.
Please tell me it's not TikTok we have to do for 7 hours.
Well, yeah, but then what they do is they plug in, and then when you awaken, you don't even know it, but you are in a tube somewhere with tens of thousands of other people, and you're being fed a reality that isn't even real.
Sure.
And and what they're doing is they're just pumping you full of a nutrient to keep you alive, so you're not using up any resources. You're not, and there's more resources for other people. I mean, I know that seems dystopian and crazy, but once you can interfere with the perception of people's reality, and that's what this technology will eventually allow people to do, is that whether it's drugs, whether it's perception, all of those things, it will allow ultimate control like we've never seen before. To go ahead. They aren't going to even know they're being controlled. I mean, already we can't see there are large tidal forces through society. And unfortunately, I think right now they're being manipulated in such a way. At the end of the day, all anybody wants I want a lot of money. Well, why do you want a lot of money? To just indulge myself. It seems so that's all you want. I mean, if you have all this control, what is it? We could be exploring the cosmos and understanding whatever existence is, but it seems to me that everybody who wants to get rich doesn't have those aspirations. I just want to go to Barbados, man. I want to have bespoke linen suits made for me and find hot chicks or hot dudes, whatever you're into. It doesn't seem like anybody that's at the highest echelons, call them the elite, call them whatever you want, that have very high aspirations.
You know what that results in, though, Robert? That the idea that you just want money to have, all of your carnal pleasures, and that will give you joy. I'm here to tell folks that would only create a greater emptiness in you than you even can conceptualize, because you don't have the money to drive yourself into that ditch that you can't even fathom. Now, one of the things that I'm thinking about here is, so with fire, to go back to fire, fire is used to cook our foods. It's used to keep us warm, allow us to move all through the planet. It's also used to burn down villages. It's also used to raise entire civilizations. It's used to torture. It can be used both ways, and that's true, I think, with basically every technology you can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
What we're talking about now is so powerful. I both am exhilarated at the thoughts of what we can do with technology for entertaining and for giving ourselves more meaningful existences, as you're describing. I'm also worried about the ability to manifest hell, and I mean that like literally, like. The idea that you could give this to, let's say, a North Korea kind of state, and that it's not bad enough that they would throw you into some sort of camp, but instead that they would give you 10,000 years, or it could be the perception of 10,000 years, in absolute unimaginable agony, and they could tickle whatever it is inside your brain that is the maximal pain level that you can possibly survive, and they could keep that going. And so I see. Here's the thing. We have guests on often. We have viewers often, and we talk about the future of entertainment. We look like 5, 6, 7 years. And what I continuously come back to is, up until this video, I have not felt that we're touching on what we're actually looking at over the next century. Now, you would put this at what, 40 to 50 years?
Oh, no, sooner than that. But I think it's going to be, it really comes down to, at this point, computing power and willpower, really. There's the old adage that computing power, what is it, exponentially every 18 months or something?
Yes.
But I think that we are, at the end of the day, it really comes down to, we have to decide, and we haven't decided this. There's no morality and no ethics that we have not set anything up to deal with what's coming. And like you said, North Korea could do this. We will have the potential, by the way, if we can truly plug into the brain, we're going to have microscopic swarm technology. Like someone could fly into your ear or up your nose and get into your brain and deposit a microscopic, we're going to have microscopic robotics. It'll be a whole new technological achievement, but you could be absconded with and never know, because as things get more and more, that's another thing, miniaturization and swarm technology. They're talking about it to use on the battlefield by sending thousands of controlled drones in singular formations to wherever it is they need to go on a battlefield. And how do you defend against that? And you make the drone small enough, it can penetrate anything. It can penetrate armor, wherever air needs to get, it can penetrate that. And it seems like weapons of war are always driving this kind of technology. But like you, I believe that bad actors are because human beings, we haven't become very enlightened. But I think the flip side to this is perhaps by increasing our ability, if you want to go on the optimistic side of things, that maybe we're going to stumble across, I don't know, secrets of the universe that we previously, just the James Webb Telescope has turned cosmology upside down, simply because it can see further into the universe than we ever could see before. And orthodox cosmology, well, not such as it was, because can any cosmology be orthodox from understanding about the universe from this single position? But at least the James Webb Telescope has really upended what we know about the universe. And that's just one basically giant eyeball in the sky. But if using artificial intelligence is going to allow us to open up what Jim Morrison might have called the doors of perception in such a profound way, maybe that we will finally put aside our baser instincts and stop worrying about killing one another and be more interested in exploring creation itself.
As we venture towards a future that's radically different, and a future where there is exponentially more power to do these things and to discover things and to get an idea of what it is that we are. As we said before, you can't even describe what consciousness is or the mind or anything. I mean, I don't know what percentage of your brain is operating right now. I mean, there are electrical pulses going on and you're completely unaware of them. And then somehow, some way, there's something in there also that's connected somehow with something intangible that also is everything that you'll ever experience and has every bit of meaning embedded in it that you have. It is literally you. And so I would love to know more about that as we go forward. But in the near term, how do we best navigate? I'm doing my best, right? I'm trying to nudge entertainment in the best direction that does the most good for the most people, and that develops an ethic and a morality that continues to push forward people into being their best selves and to not devolve into stupid tribalism and hating each other for immutable differences, which is back in vogue apparently. What is our game plan because of how big the stakes are? Because remember, let's circle back as we wrap this conversation up. We said about children, you don't teach them by going through a set of rules. You teach them by telling them a narrative in which the ethic is embedded inside of it. That's the little red hen. Okay, so the stories really, really matter. So when folks say, Pro, you're a grown man, why are you talking about Star Wars? Why are you talking about? Well, because the ethic is embedded in the story.
100%.
And these are the biggest stories being promulgated across our culture. And it's ripping our culture apart as we take these heroes and these fables that we created and we denigrate them into trash. Okay, how do we navigate this? For the folks out there, localize this. For the folks out there, how do we get our best foot forward to lead this thing in a good direction where the world is in a better place and hopefully we can put people in power who will do the right thing with forming narratives that will be in our brains and will be so much more powerful experientially than they are today. You've got an hour. Go.
That's one of the most difficult questions I think that's been posed to me in years.
And the most difficult I think I've ever asked. I couldn't even figure out how to get it out.
I mean, no, that's an incredible question. And I know for a fact that human beings are really bad at answering that question. Unfortunately. And we can't even figure out the morality and ethics in our own day-to-day lives based on our political affiliations or based on our tribal affiliations or ethnic affiliations. So what you're asking about is something that here's where I would be pessimistic. I don't even think that we know how or even what's coming. We don't know what we don't know. So we don't know how to govern. Like, what are the morals and what are the ethical ramifications of all of this? And it's funny because I think we've been warned. A lot of the best science fiction, especially literary science fiction, there's a lot of authors who have delved into this. specifically, there's a book called Blind Sight by a guy named Peter Watts about an alien intelligence that doesn't have consciousness. It's intelligent, but it doesn't have consciousness. I mean,
Right. And by the way, Robert, what you just mean, this is one of the profound mysteries to me. And maybe somebody out there watching the video can explain it in depth to us. It doesn't seem necessary to me that consciousness or qualia or the mind should exist at all, because you could imagine a world where everyone just follows through deterministic neuron firings, that they just follow a pattern through life, and they would, by all intents and purposes, look just like us and act just like us. But maybe they wouldn't. Maybe consciousness is integral to whatever this is that we're doing. I don't know.
I don't either. And we see it on this. Look, the room that I'm in, this is actually a garage that I've turned into my observatory. I had an ant infestation. And I looked at this ant infestation, and I could find where they were coming in, and they just stayed in one line going across this back wall here. And my first inclination was to destroy them. And this was all summer long. And I'm like, you know what? They're not going anywhere else. There's no food in here. So they just figured out a way, I think, to get from the backyard into the front yard where they needed to go, and then into the front yard and the backyard where they needed to go for whatever reason. So I have to tell you, for this past summer, I watched this line of ants for 24/7. They just continued back and forth. And I looked at them and I'm like, they don't even know I'm here. I don't know in their perception if they knew there's no way. So they're not even aware that I exist.
They're following a chemical trail.
They're doing whatever they need to do. But I was fascinated. I was watching this going, I was amazed by it. And it went on for months. And then one day, it was gone. They were all gone. And I in a way, it made me sad. I'm like, where did they go? I will never know. And maybe they'll come back, or maybe they finished a task. But I don't think that they were conscious. They didn't have consciousness the way we had consciousness, but they had a purpose.
And artificial intelligence, I don't think, would have spent the time to sit and ponder those ants in the way that you did, for better or worse. I don't know what that means, but I don't think that it would. And I think that there's something existential, or at least definitive, about humanity and what you've just described in the experience of watching that, and the experience of awe.
I was going to say, what it instilled in me was wonder.
Yeah.
Not just wonder, not marvel and awe and wonder. I call it awe and wonder, but both, and this is something. And here, to me, watching this in a corner of my garage over one summer instilled in me a sense of awe and wonder. And I can tell you and ponder this. A lot of people would think I'm nuts. People would have said, just buy.
Oh, we went way past there 30 minutes ago. Don't worry.
And I because they weren't bothering me any other way, and they were going behind these bookshelves. And for me, you're the first person I've actually told this to. There's no reason I would have even shared it with anyone else.
I'm glad we did this in private. We'll test this out later.
Me too. But the thing is, I think what we've all forgotten is we're surrounded by awe and wonder. And we can choose to see it, recognize it, revel in it, or we can choose. I think most people just don't see that at all. But that's a perception issue. So the question is, will artificial intelligence ever feel that way?
Right, because that's a motivational tool. Right, 100%. Without that, science never occurs unless there's the awe of seeing the phenomenon and wondering how does that happen? What does that mean? And that's what, there's a motivational foundation to science.
Well, you take it back to kids. I remember, I don't know how much they do this in public school anymore, but when you have science projects, even in the first, second, and third grade, the most basic demonstrations of physics, I was in awe and wonder of those things too. The thing was, I had great teachers, who were there because we still respected teachers. You'd never talk back to a teacher. And the teachers were showing us basic universal principles, whether it was gravity, whether it was surface tension, call it what you want. But there was always something really interesting. And as I remember as a child, my mom, this was in the second grade, apparently I would come home and I would have to recite everything that I learned in school that day because all of it amazed me. And my mom, after this, had to just tell me, please don't talk at dinner. But I'm like, but everything amazed me. Everything. It still kind of does, hence the ants. But we need, more than ever, we need to start instilling in people the knowledge that this is coming. And I don't know how to do that, but this is coming, and forget jobs. What's going to happen is that your perception and your sense of self is going to change in a way that I can't predict right now. But imagine already people, oh, I'm so depressed. Well, imagine what's going to happen if you could suddenly perceive the universe in a much different way. If you could see the submicroscopic world, if you could see the universe below your feet, and not in a quantum mania kind of way, because you're going to have to, what would it be like to be able to go into an ant colony and hang out and watch what ants are doing? I mean, imagine when you get to see it from, they all look like from the movie Them in the 50s. If you were looking at ants that looked, 8 feet long to you, but that's what this new technology is going to bring us. How is that going to change your perception of the world? If you could follow, we've seen nature, you watch Attenborough's nature specials, which are amazing. But what if you could actually be a bee for a day? What if you could plug into the old noggin and the same perception of, you see what a bee sees the way a bee sees things?
Well, that would be transformative, because we don't even know what it is that a bee experiences at all. I mean, that's that idea of you don't know what the color red is until you see something red. Well, the bee has seen things that you've never seen before in a way that you've never seen before. So, is our brain even possible? Is it even possible in our brain to get that? I don't know.
What does that do to your sense of self?
Exactly.
If suddenly, I mean, we're grounded in how we perceive the world. But if artificial intelligence and the kind of technology that we're going to be getting down the pike in the next 50 years, are you going to lose yourself? Are you going to, I mean, there's already dissociative identity disorder. Well, what if you start having human being dissociative disorder?
I think there's a lot of young people experiencing that right now, because their real experienced life is on a glowing box in front of them, and it doesn't
100%.
translate to the physical world that they interact with in their classrooms and their first jobs they take.
And what if people you talk about now? Well, I identify as a two-spirit wolf or whatever.
Well, that's because they grew up doing that since they were 5 years old on these video games. And listen, I love video games, but this is a phenomenon that they have brought to themselves from fiction, and it's been something that's been there since they were very little, and then they apply it to the real world and it doesn't work, and they don't understand why. Because you're not role-playing in the real world, or at least not to that degree.
No, but what happens when your senses are interrupted and you instead replace those with the senses of a real wolf? Because we'll be able to tap into their perception the same way we can tap into our perception, and then you plug into your own dog.
Well, Dave Filoni will never make another Star Wars entity again. He'll just be role playing a wolf out there.
I mean, there's a movie that Wim Wenders made called Until the End of the World, and they had a technology where you could record your own dreams. And what happened is that people they were so enamored of their own dreams because, one, it comes from you, and you only get it in your subconscious. But what if you could suddenly see them? And that's going to come too. I mean, people are going to get addicted to their own subconscious.
Right, and then analyzing that probably to the nth degree.
I mean, can you imagine going to a therapist and you got to bring me your dreams for the last month, and a therapist could watch your own subconscious and then advise you or give you therapy based on, I mean, I don't know if I'd want anybody to
I don't know about that one.
But we're going to get there.
I think it's fascinating how close we are to the technological ability to do so. We'll see how this plays out. But, if you just apply the exponential rise in computational power, You look at the rising abilities now of quantum computing. I think we are closer now to disruptive times than we are farther away. So that'll
Will we
take people
survive
by
it?
surprise.
I
Well,
mean, like you said, you're bringing fire to the masses. I mean, I would like to think that we still see in our society remnants of thousands of years ago. And I do think, as an optimist and a futurist, I do think that we're going to reach a point like artificial intelligence is supposed to reach the singularity. I'd like to believe that humanity and the singularity are supposed to happen, that what happens with the singularity is going to affect humanity in such a profound way that it might be, if we can survive it, if we can get past it, that's what's supposed to happen. That's the next stage in our evolution. And
well,
I really, if we survive it.
as we venture towards there, let me offer an answer when we ask the question, what can we do? Let me give you two principles that I hope that we will all push for in entertainment as we move forward. And you tell me what you think of these. Because as you were saying, it's very hard because we're trying to design out a morality for a world that we can't really even understand. But here's the two things that I try to push for on my channel, and I hope that in the little tiny influence that I have, that this goes out there and disseminates to others. One, as truthful as we can be, because figuring out the truth is plenty tough, but as truthful as we can be, we should try to be that. And then as kind as we can be to others, we should do that. And I don't mean just eliminate suffering, but rather I mean, because we're conscious creatures and because we have no idea what that is, but as far as we know, we're the only ones in the universe that have consciousness such as this. You described earlier that animals, don't enjoy entertainment in the way that we do. Entertainment seems to be directly connected to whatever this qualia is that we have. If it were up to cats, they just sit and watch TV with birds eating birdseed all day long. 24 hours, they'd be happy. We're not like that.
No.
So beyond just eliminating suffering, I would propose that we should wish and we should act in such a way that we bring out the best potential in others. And so that's the two things that I would suggest as we go forward. Be as truthful as you can be, despite the fact that the truth is very hard, and wish for the best and act out in such a way to bring forth the best potential of those around you. Are those fair?
I think that's amazing. I would also add that I think that we have diminished, especially here in the West, we've diminished the importance of education on all levels, because I think that enlightenment, knowledge, brings with it what you were just saying. And I think, unfortunately, that knowledge, a well-rounded education, used to be valued for its own sake, not for any kind of a profit motive. But the more you know about the world, and I think this is going to be crucial in whatever is coming down the road. The more we know about everything, the better off we're going to be. And obviously, you can't know everything, but I think right now I'm seeing, especially here in the United States, that a good education is not necessarily valued, because a good education requires work. It's hard. And
delayed gratification.
It brings me back to my point. I mean, the thing that scares me about artificial intelligence is if it makes the entire world easy, but no one understands the theory behind what it is that they're doing. Like, if you don't understand the elements of style, which is a book by Strunk and White that any writer should have, that talks about how language and actual grammar and everything works so you can become a good writer. If you don't understand the basic fundamental underpinnings of how to write, and you just allow artificial intelligence to do it for you, you're never going to be able to be a great writer. And I worry that all of human knowledge, we're going to lose the underpinnings of our intellect to AI, because it's hard. It's hard to know what's happening, and it's hard. You have to do the work, and AI is taking out all the hard work, and it's just giving you, it's like, I remember, I always used to think when I was doing math, because I wasn't great at math when I was a kid. I figured it out later. And then I was like, oh, now I get it. But it's like showing your work. It's that's why you can't just write the answer down. You have to understand how you got to that answer. And artificial intelligence, I don't want it to turn the world into a math test where you only see the answers.
Well,
You're describing
math. You're describing wanting to have the conscious experience of learning versus having the binary response at your fingertips. And I definitely think that's a good stopping point for what we've just been discussing in terms of entertainment, artificial intelligence, consciousness, and everything else that came up. Folks out there, I hope you have enjoyed this type of content. We'd like to bring you more of it. But there's only way that happens, and the only way is you've got to click the like button, share, subscribe, drop a comment down below, and tell us what you think. We would love to hear your thoughts, because you're a conscious creature with your own experiences, and bring those to the table, please. Mr. Burnett, where can folks find you and your impressive intellect on this great, big, beautiful web?
Well, you can find me on The Burnett Work on YouTube, find me on X at BurnettRM, or find me on Instagram at RMBurnett. And if I may say, I want to very much thank you for asking me to participate in this conversation, because this is exactly the kind of thing I think we need more of on this platform. So it was a real honor, sir, and thank you for asking.
A pleasure, and we'll keep at it. Folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
I'm the ghost of Star Wars.
You know what would be a real treat this Halloween? Checking out wdwpro. He's got all the sweet news on his Thursday live show at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Not to mention, his daily videos are a real treat.
Guys, I'm the ghost of Star Wars. Get it?
You know, we should go and make sure we're subscribed.
Guys, I'm the ghost of Star Wars.
And while we're at it, we'll ring that bell to make sure we're notified.
Great, let's go. Because, well, we actually care about that. Let's go.
Fact. Star Wars is not dead. It's haunting the staffs of Disney Plus.